We can recite from 71 to 73. Since they are
اللهم صل على محمد آل محمد.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Congratulations on the birth of Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salam. Continuing on reflections on the ayat of Surah Yunus, as we mentioned, it is a surah that is revealed or was revealed in Mecca. It does deal with the main principles of Islam or the religion and the core of Tawheed, Nubuwwah, and the truthfulness of the Holy Quran being a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Repeated concepts in the surah and confirmed in different ways in various parts of the surah. The focus again is on the truthfulness of the messengers and their message. So the Quran is brought up every now and then, and the messenger, all in as an effort to encourage people to believe, to accept the messenger, especially in the early time of the mission or the message, where people were still denying and questioning, had so many reasons or so many excuses rather to deny, bringing up things like the fact that the prophet is only a human, or they have not been revealed to. How is he revealed to? If God speaks to someone, God would speak to them, for example. Why doesn't God speak to them? And so many other arguments that they would bring up in order to deny. And so the ayat responded to those in multiple places in the Quran. Eventually came the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them examples of previous nations. Now, at the beginning of the surah did remind the people that the messenger is a bearer of good news and a warner. He warns and he gives the glad tidings, and warns of the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, warns of the consequences of their actions or their denial, therefore their actions, and obviously gives them the glad tidings of paradise and even goodness in this world before the hereafter, before paradise. The ayat that we just started briefly last week and here this week, and inshallah in the coming sessions, they are the examples. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the principle, the core beliefs, and gave them the good news, gave them the warnings, and now examples of previous nations who had their messenger give them the good news and warn them, and what happened to them when they did not pay heed to the message and to the warnings of the messenger. The first example here given is Nabiullah Nuh. You may ask, why not before him, Nabiullah Adam, for example? Why not any of the prophets between Adam and Nuh? It seems the size of the audience and the consequences, the size of the consequences that happened at that time were significant enough to match the situation with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because Nuh alayhi salam was one of Anbiya ulil azm. He was one of those who was responsible for humanity at the time, and his message was as vast in terms of the size of his audience as it would be ratio-wise in comparison to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And therefore, the first example that was given was the story of Nabiullah Nuh. Perhaps prior to him, nations were not as interconnected and communicating. Each city, each group of people had their messenger or successor of the messenger. We believe that there was no time that humans were left without a messenger or a successor, either a Nabi or a Wasi. Nabiullah Adam alayhi salam was a messenger. He was revealed to and spoken to by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was on a mission to guide his people. Although some other groups of faith don't have that perception of him or vision of him, in Christianity, they don't have him as a prophet of God. However, in Islam, interestingly, even in other religions, they do believe that he was spoken to by God. God gave him a command, a direct command, and so on and so forth. And then when he was descended on earth, he was also given certain commands. So, but they don't consider that to be of the characteristics of prophets. Whereas in Islam, we believe Adam nabina wa alayhi salam was a prophet of God. He received commands and he received guidance, and he was on a mission to guide his family. And continuing from there, he had successors. Sheeth is suggested to be his first successor, one of his children, Sheeth, and continuing from there were prophets or their successors. And these successors were, in many cases, were themselves prophets. The difference between the successors of our final messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and previous messengers is that previous messengers were, or previous successors of previous messengers were prophets, and with our imams, they were not prophets. There were no new prophethood. It doesn't bring their status down. It is just the title of prophethood, nubuwwah, and a specific role of a prophet was not given to them. They were to succeed and confirm and do tasdeeq of the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Nothing new, nothing changes. They just continue confirming, elaborating, explaining the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is the famous hadith that the Prophet says to Imam Ali alayhi salam, you are to me like Harun was to Musa, except that there's no prophet after me. إِلَّا أَنَّهُ لَا نَبِيَّ بَعْدِي. Meaning, you're not a prophet, but everything else that Harun was to Musa. What was Harun to Musa? He was his partner in the Risala. أَشْرِكْهُ فِي أَمْرِي. He was a supporter. أُشْدُدْ بِهِ أَزْرِي. So Harun to Musa was his partner, they were on the mission together. اذهبا إلى فرعون. Go together, both of you, to Pharaoh. So the Prophet and Imam Ali alayhi salam were hand in hand dealing with the mushrikeen of Quraysh and the kuffar of the time. And the Imam was his partner, but was not a prophet after him. That is the difference. So in every given time, there were successors, and the prophets would announce who the successor would be, and sometimes they would send that individual to his town or to a village, or to his family even, who would eventually expand and become a bigger family and so on. Like the Prophet Ishaq and Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam, alayhim as-salam. Ishaq or Isaac alayhi salam, he had his son Yaqub, and he gave him certain wasaya, certain teachings, and part of his will is that you're the messenger. Yaqub alayhi salam, then he had his children. He went on a mission specific for his children, who became the tribes of Bani Israel. The 12 tribes of Bani Israel from the children of Yaqub ala nabina wa alayhi salam, because he's also known as Israel. So The messengers had their successors and they had their mission. The ones who had worldwide mission, a mission for humanity, and their role was a lot larger, their audience a lot larger, were Anbiya ulul azm. And these are the ones that were given as, or the first one that was given as an example in this surah is the first one amongst them, Nabiullah Nuh, ala nabina wa alayhi salam, because again of the size of his mission and also what happened as a result of people denying. So something happened that God recorded, history wrote it, all nations or religions spoke about it, and it was pretty big. Now, was it the size of the entire earth, or was it a region on earth? Allahu A'lam. Perhaps my personal interpretation of the matter, based on my research and studies, is that it was that region. It was not the entire earth going underwater. It was the region that he lived in and most of humanity at the time lived in. Maybe there were other humans that lived in other parts of the world, but did not live in the main region that they lived. Similar to, I'll give you the example of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. His mission was worldwide. Yes, we believe it is. وَأَرْسَلْنَاكَ لِلنَّاسِ كَافَّةً. Quran is very clear. We sent you to all of the people. So it's not just for the Arabs. It's not just for the peninsula or what the area he lived in. It was for humanity. لِلنَّاسِ كَافَّةً, for all of the people. However, at the time, Rahmat Ahsant, and mercy to the world. Rahmah happens through guidance. For insan especially, it happens through guidance. The highest level of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to us is the fact that He guided us. This is our Prophet. However, when he was sent, he sent letters to the nearby kingdoms, okay, and emperors. To the Romans, to the Yemeni, to the North African, to the Persians. He sent letters to them, guiding them or inviting them to the guidance and following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so on. However, arguably, there were people in other regions that he did not connect with or contact. Yes? There were people in, for instance, today's India and China. There were people in today's Australia, for example. There were people in today's North America. And immediately after him came the successors. They did reach, perhaps India and maybe even connected or contacted even China during the time of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. Maybe they went as far as contacting and connecting with these people, but we could argue that they never reached Australia or never reached North America or South America and the original inhabitants of this land. So does it mean that it was not worldwide? No, it was worldwide. It is a mission, ongoing mission. Nevertheless, it would not have been fair by any means to punish a people who did not receive the message. So Nabiullah Nuh ala nabina wa alayhi salam, he would not have more means than our Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to reach those regions. So to cover it all in water and flood it all, that does not, does not go well with what we understand of Arhamur Rahimin, and that He would never punish unless He warns of the consequences of their own actions. That basically His punishment is removal of His protection and mercy. That is what the punishment is. He removes His protection and mercy, and what happens? Earth rebels against these rebels, or basically goes against these rebels, not rebels. Rather, the earth and nature would be punishing them because they are going against nature. So again, Nabiullah Nuh ala nabina wa alayhi salam, the first example given in this story of a people who denied, of a people who continuously argued against their prophet, ridiculed their prophet, denied his message, and never accepted or appreciated. Therefore, eventually, the command came, and they were all drowned, except himself, Nuh ala nabina wa alayhi salam, and a number of people, his family members, except his son and his wife, who were not with him and with the believers, and his some of the believers that believed in him. And Quran says they were only a few. Narrations tell us that there were 80 people who believed. Everybody else did not. Now, by then, from the time of Nabiullah Adam to the time of Nabiullah Nuh ala nabina wa alayhi salam, several hundred years, okay? Hundreds of years passed before him. And then Nuh himself lived or invited his people for 950 years, could have lived before the message for at least 40 years, according to some narrations, and some suggest 500 years. Regardless, if we go with the 40 years, by the time the flood happened, he was 1,000 years old, less 10 years, yeah? 950 plus the 40, yeah? And then after the flood, we are told that he lived, in some records or narrations, 500 years, and some suggest more than that. So he could have lived, or there are narrations that total his life to 2,500 years. But let's say 1,000 years roughly before the flood, and another 500 or something years from the time of Adam to his time, to Nuh alayhi salam. So now we have almost 1,500 years of the life of Bani Adam. Okay, maybe humanity, maybe just Bani Adam. We'll leave it there. So now we have all these years. How many people? They would have been significant, you know, and they were mostly in that region, living in those Bain al-Nahrain, or the Babylon, and you know, today's Iraq and so on. That region was the most suitable region for life, and they started there. So all these humans that had increased in numbers and lived in that region were invited, and only 80 from them believed from amongst them. And so eventually the command came. So back to the ayah and how it was. It starts with وَاتْلُ عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ نُوحٍ. We did this ayah last week. إِذْ قَالَ لِقَوْمِهِ يَا قَوْمِ, my people, they speak, prophets, they speak gently and softly with the people. They attribute, they refer to their people as their own, you know, my people. If you are, and then the initial speech, or the initial tone of that speech, was very soft, but eventually he becomes very serious. Yeah, I'm sorry. Eventually, it becomes very, very strong and very serious. He says, if you're not accepting, and if you feel burdened by me and my continuous reminders, وَتَذْكِيرِ بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ, therefore come and don't give me any respite. Do your punish me, do whatever you want to do, because they kept on threatening that we will kill you, we will stone you, we will do this to you. So he says, don't give me respite, just do it. Go ahead. ثُمَّ اقْضُوا إِلَيَّ وَلَا تُنظِرُونَ. Make your judgment, your act accordingly, and don't give me any time. Now, that itself is important to reflect on. Why would he put such a challenge out? Why would he address them in this manner and, tell them, come and punish me? Do whatever you have been warning and threatening, Do it. Come on, go ahead, do it. Don't give me a respite. This itself is a style in when you want to be influential on people. Sometimes you have to go to certain edges. Okay, show them that even in child discipline, it's important sometimes to show them. If you have a teenager, sometimes you have to use this method. They want to see what's the end of it, or how far would you go, and you have to be strong. You have to be strong. You have to be strict. In some, everything within reason, but sometimes it's important in order to, when you've tried and tried and tried, in order to make sure that you're the party that you're addressing or dealing with, they get your point and understand how serious you are, to basically go to the extreme. Now he's saying to them, this is my faith, this is my belief. God is there protecting me. God is guiding. And if you keep warning, if you don't want to believe, you don't want to agree, you don't want to accept, you don't like me even reminding you, because we said the people often don't like those who remind them because they don't want to listen. And so when you keep reminding them, they feel bad. Perhaps their conscience starts hurting them. So they don't want to hear it. Because hearing it annoys them. Okay, so and so he says, if this is what you want, if this is how it is and where you are, then go ahead and do whatever you're warning me. So this is an effective method sometimes sometimes it's necessary in trying to pass the message and get the people to understand, whoever you're dealing with. Then he says, فَإِن تَوَلَّيْتُمْ فَمَا سَأَلْتُكُمْ مِنْ أَجْرٍ إِنْ أَجْرِيَ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ وَأُمِرْتُ أَنْ أَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. If you turn back, now here turn back, on the one hand, you're not listening to me, you're not accepting, and on the other hand, you're not even going with the challenge. Because he's saying to them what? ثُمَّ اقْضُوا إِلَيَّ وَلَا تُنْظِرُونَ. Go ahead and do whatever your judgment says, and don't give me respite, don't delay it. Go ahead and do it. If you walk away here, it's walking away from both believing and acting the other extreme. So they're not going to either extremes. One is to go from denying to believing, that's one. Another is to go to the other extreme where they're willing to even kill him or execute what they warned and threatened. Okay, so he says, ثُمَّ اقْضُوا إِلَيَّ وَلَا تُنْظَرُونَ. Here, the other extreme is to do it. What he's saying, to execute that. So they are not. If you're not doing either of those, فَإِن تَوَلَّيْتُمْ. If you walk away, walk back, turn back, don't do any of those, then he declares something very important that messengers often told their people. فَمَا سَأَلْتُكُمْ مِنْ أَجْرٍ. I never asked you for a reward. So what is he saying here? Again, subhanAllah, techniques to influence, using all the different means to influence. Why? Because they love the people. Because he feels bad for them. He doesn't. It's not that the prophets get excited when God punishes people. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. That would be the character of a sick person. They are so caring, so loving. Azizun alayhi ma anittum. One of the descriptions given about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It is so heavy on him. It's so hard for him when you struggle. Al-ana is to struggle. If you're struggling, it hurts him. Not struggling just in we're not speaking of them struggling in the sense that they're financially struggling or something. No. If they are struggling in terms of their faith, and which results in turning away from God's law, and struggling with faith results in tough life and bad, all the bad consequences in the hereafter. إِنَّ لَهُ مَعِيشَةً ضَنْكًا وَنَحْشُرُهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَعْمَى. So here their struggle and in the hereafter. For the prophets, that combination of them struggling here and eventually being, in the blind journey in the hereafter. For the prophet, that hurts him, that his people are not listening and hurting themselves. That is not only a prophet. Yes, he was the peak of the God's mercy, rahmatan lil alamin, and he had more mercy than any other prophet, perhaps. However, all the prophets were merciful. All the prophets were kind and loving. All of them were sane people. They were not sick people. It is a sick person who wants people to get in the, do the wrong thing and hurt themselves. End up, let's say you see somebody driving, a young boy driving crazy, and you know that this is going to lead to an accident. Would any sane person, would any decent person hope and pray for them to keep going like this and hurt themselves? You would think this is, what's wrong with this person? Now, if they harm that person individually, say for instance, they come and do a donut right in front of him and scare him deliberately, and that person might think, okay, if they don't have a big heart like the Prophet, I think, you know what, you deserve what you're going to get because of your driving. Go ahead and drive like this. Okay, so that is someone who does not have all, forgiveness and mercy and is not loving and kind at that level. Yeah, but the prophets were not like that. The prophets, all of them were extremely kind, extremely merciful. They would pray for the people to get guidance so that they don't harm themselves. Allahumma ahdi qawmi fa'annahum la ya'lam. They don't know any better. So the prophet is using now another prophet, Nuh ala nabina wa alayhi salam, is using another technique now to get them. So now you walked away. You don't want to listen, and you don't want to go ahead and punish, which is good, because you do that and you expose yourself to extreme punishment from God. Nevertheless, now you're walking away. You're not listening again. Then he says, فَمَا سَأَلْتُكُم مِّنْ أَجْرٍ. That is one of the ways that he confirms his message. I never asked you for a reward. I didn't tell you, come pay me something. People who are opening these temples and they make it like a business, they're doing that because they want money for themselves. And so when you go to them, they ask you to sacrifice for their gods. They ask you to pay them, pay the priests, and so on. Whereas the prophets of God, one of the ways they prove the truthfulness of their message is that we never asked you for anything. فَمَا سَأَلْتُكُم مِّنْ أَجْرٍ. I never asked you for a reward. My reward is with the Lord, with God. إِنْ أَجْرِيَ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ. And more than that, وَأُمِرْتُ أَنْ أَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. I am not inviting you to something that I'm not doing myself. I have been commanded before you. The Prophet is commanded to follow guidance before his people. And he accepted before his people. And he followed the guidance before. And then he came and told his people to come and follow the guidance. The same in Surah Yasin we read in the words of that individual who came to guide his people. Now in the hadith we are told his name was Habib al-Najjar. وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى. What did he say? قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اتَّبِعُوا الْمُرْسَلِينَ. My people, again, similar style. So even supporters and those who assist and help prophets, they adopt the same style. So he comes and says, Ya qawmi, my people, اتبعوا المرسلين, follow the messengers. The first thing they said is what? He said to them, اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا, saying, follow those who don't ask you for a reward. Here, he says to them, فما سألتكم من أجر, I don't ask you for a reward. And he continued, اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا. And what else? وهم مهتدون, they themselves are guided. You see them, they're guided people, they're truthful people, they're kind people, they're good people. They're guided. So the Prophet ﷺ, he cannot say about himself that I am guided, but he says, I have been commanded to be amongst the believers. In another ayah we read, أُمِرْتُ أَنْ أَكُونَ أَوَّلَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, the first, not just as someone who submits, the first, both in terms of time-wise and in terms of the level of faith, first, or submission. Level of submission of the Prophet ﷺ, or any of the prophets, is the first amongst their people. وَأُمِرْتُ أَنْ أَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, I've been commanded to be amongst those who submit to God. I've been commanded to follow God's guidance and submit. Yeah.
What's the أول مسلمين versus Muslimin? Because أول means foremost.
Yeah.
It should be foremost.
Yes. So I mentioned that one. Perhaps here it doesn't say awwal because of the fact that he is not supposed to make it difficult for them, make the argument. So it's all about how can I make the argument effective. So perhaps that's the suggestion that's made, that in some cases he is now giving them a general thing that just like I'm commanding you to submit and follow, I've been commanded to submit and follow. Okay, so now you can be the judges. Am I not following what I'm teaching you? Now the third person in the story in Surah Yasin, the third person said, وَهُمْ مُهْتَدُونَ, they're guided. Okay, so he's confirming that they're following guidance. The Prophet himself cannot confirm for himself, so he says, I have been commanded. In other words, you judge. If I'm doing opposite to what I'm telling you, if I'm following different things, different guidance to what I'm suggesting that you should follow, then that would confirm to you that there's something wrong with my message. But I've been commanded just like you are. Now, just like you are is a very soft way. If he says, I am I've been commanded to be the first could be, exactly, not just a distinction. It may seem like he's being arrogant. You know what I mean? That I am the first. I am in a better position than you. No, here he's putting himself with the people, okay, at the same level. I have been commanded to be amongst the believers. You have been commanded, I've been commanded. So it's all about the effective technique. Now, in some areas, in some cases, he may have to confirm that part, okay, at some level, to confirm that the level of my submission is even different. I've submitted before everybody else at a higher level, higher than everybody else. So that's the awwal muslimin. But in this situation, he would have used this because it's the most effective. The goal of the prophets are to speak with the people on their level so that they can make sense to them. نحن معاشر الأنبياء أمرنا أن نكلم الناس على قدر عقولهم. We, the prophets, the Prophet ﷺ was quoted to have said, we, the prophets, have been commanded to speak to the people on their level of intellect. What would make most sense to them? How would they be most likely to accept the guidance? We would guide them in that manner. We would use those arguments. So perhaps that is why he said, وَأُمِرْتُ أَنْ أَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, not أول in this particular ayah. فَكَذَّبُوهُ, they denied. Now, he used all these different arguments, and this is only in this chapter. We have other ayat. We have Surah Nuh, for example, a whole chapter named after Nabiullah Nuh ala nabina wa alayhi salam, and in there several ayat. And we have the different parts of the different chapters speaking of how he spoke to his people and what he said to them. وقلت استغفروا ربكم إنه كان غفارا يرسل السماء عليكم مدرارا ويمددكم بأموال وبنين ويجعل لكم جنات ويجعل لكم أنهارا ما لكم لا ترجون لله وقارا. What is wrong with you? You have no consideration for the status of God. God is the omnipotent. There's no limit to his power. Do you not consider what he could do to you? Why do you continue denying? So he used so many different ways, arguments, lines of guidance, invitations, istighfar. What happens if you seek forgiveness? God will give you so many blessings. He will give you gardens and rivers and children and everything that you want. Seek forgiveness and he will grant you all these things. So he used all the different ways of guiding these people, but the result was فَكَذَّبُوهُ, they denied him. The ayah is very immediate. فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَنَجَّيْنَاهُ. Immediately. Those timelines, 900 or something years, is nothing in the books of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَنَجَّيْنَاهُ. Immediately goes to the saving aspect. Now there are hadith that speak about how many years he planted the trees, and then how many he planted the first set of trees, and then he had to use their seeds and plant another set of trees, and then he used all these trees. Eventually he had to cut them, and then he had to make the ship. And it was taking years and years doing all that. So God skips all that, because in his books, that's all a split second. It's nothing. So he goes from فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَنَجَّيْنَاهُ. They denied, we saved him. Earlier I said, the punishment is normally the consequence, yes? And God removing his protection and mercy from the people is what leads to punishment. So he says, فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَنَجَّيْنَاهُ. We saved him. We saved him and those who were with him. فَنَجَّيْنَاهُ وَمَنْ مَعَهُ. In other words, that God is the one who's protecting, and in this case, he's saving. Otherwise, if he removes his protection, or if he doesn't save us, what happens to us? We would not survive for a second. From within ourselves, the attacks that would happen to us from within to now this saving that God saves us, this protection that God protects us through, could be a kind of intervention, or it could be the formative level of protection. So, for instance, he's put, when he created us, he has put systems in us to protect us, to save us. And he also has angels protecting us. So there are certain things that are automatic, certain things that are from God and his angels. Nevertheless, if he removes that, our systems could go all out of whack. All of a sudden, the body that is supposed to discard of any cancerous cell that develops gets confused and skips one or two, and they become a disease, a terminal disease that nobody can solve. This is how we seek refuge to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from it, but this is how it happens. The body normally deals with it. If the body skips it for whatever reason, that's when these diseases develop. So the protection is from him, and saving is also from him. فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَنَجَّيْنَاهُ. And وَمَن مَّعَهُ, those are who are with him. Not with him physically, because his son was with him physically. He's close to him, even in terms of bloodline. So it's not about who is with him physically, who is next to him, who is his companion, Sahaba. It's not about that. It's about who is with him spiritually, who believed in him, who prayed with him, and so on. فكذبوه فنجيناه ومن معه في الفلك. We saved them in the fulk is the ark, the ship that they made. So they were saved through that. God saves the people, but he also makes means for them. Could he have made things in a miraculous way? Yes, they could have walked on the water. But in general and normally, he saves us through the natural means. So in this case, it was through the fulk. And we need to make an effort for it. These are subtle lessons, yeah? The Nuh ala nabina wa alayhi salam, he had to build that ship. It wasn't just made for him, brought from heaven, it's there ready. No, he had to start making it and spend so much time, years making it until it was ready. Descriptions of it are amazing when you read. If you read about it, it would have been probably close in size to some of the largest cruises or ships that are made today. Close. Maybe some of I'm not saying the largest, but some of them. So it was quite large. For him to make it, it would have taken a lot of effort, with the minimal machinery and even in terms of numbers of people. Now, some of these ships today, they have hundreds of people working on it. And in his case, even if the believers were helping him, they were only a few, maximum 80 of them. So there weren't that many who were helping him. So essentially, it took a long time to make that ship. And it is important to understand that we need God is the one who saves, God is the one who helps, God is the one who protects, but he also wants us to make an effort and not to just sit and wait for it to happen. He had to make the ship and God saved him in that ship. Now, if God doesn't want to, even that ship is not safe. Even the Titanic was not safe. When it was made, I don't know how true that is, but I've heard that the one who made it said something like God himself cannot sing this ship. I've heard this comment from several people. I don't know how true that is. I did not hear him say that. It was not in my lifetime, was it? So in any case, made this ship thinking nothing could happen to it, and that ship did not survive. So the ship of Nabiullah Nuh was protected by God. It was the means of saving them. He had to make it, but God has to also make it safe for them. And just like he says to God speaks to the fire of Ibrahim alayhi salam. What does he say to it? Ya naru kuni bardan wa salam. Be cool and peace on Ibrahim. In this case, God spoke to the ship, spoke to even the water, the mountains, everything. And eventually, when time came, it had to settle. He also, made them come down with peace. His peace and rahmah came upon these people whom he saved. في الفلك وجعلناهم. Here it's very brief. The description is very brief. There are some other chapters that are give more details of where it settled. واستوت على الجودي, for example, the mountain known as Judi is where it settled. And then we said Nuh and his people that you come disembark from it with peace and with the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on. So there are some other ayat that give more details. وَجَعَلْنَاهُمْ خَلَائِفَ. We made them the heirs. Khala'if from Khalifa, the ones who inherits, the one who comes after. Khala'if, we made them the Khala'if, and on the other hand, we drowned who? We drowned the وَأَغْرَقْنَا الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا, the ones who denied and lied about our signs. So it started with فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَنَجَّيْنَاهُ. He was saved, and the believers were saved with him, and they were made to be the heirs, the rulers on earth, and we made the others that denied, made them drown. كذبوا بآياتنا وأغرقنا الذين كذبوا بآياتنا فانظر كيف كان عاقبة المنذرين. This is very, very important. Before I get into this term or this statement, فانظر كيف كان عاقبة المنذرين, any questions up to here about the ship, about the, any comments? Because this is gonna take a little bit of time and I want to elaborate on this. So if you have questions up to here, otherwise we will get into this concept. فانظر كيف كان عاقبة المنذرين. Okay. Yes. Yeah, so now what did they take with them? I'll repeat the question. So was it for the whole world? If it was not, because I suggested that it may not have been for the entire world, including, let's say, the Americas, North and South America. Nuh alayhi salam did not come here, it seems. I mean, he did not guide these people, so why drown them? And it was not perhaps, I don't know, islands or Australia or whatever, so why would they drown? And if they were not made to drown, then why was the need to take the animals with them? There are two different narratives completely, and we need to be very careful. One narrative, to me personally, makes no scientific sense, which says he had to take a pair of every animal existed on earth because the entire earth went under the flood, and he had to take two of every single animal existed on earth. I think that is impossible. That's my personal theory. That is impossible, and he was not opening a zoo in his ship. And even if he was, there are limitations to what animals were available in the region he was. Okay, so there we have animals in different parts of the world that didn't live in. So did he send missionaries to, I don't know, to the pole, to the North or South Pole to get some penguins, for instance, and make sure they are safe? Oh, but they can survive the flood, so maybe not them. But I mean, think about it. Did he have to go in and then did that include ants, for example, and all the different bugs that don't survive the water? What did he take? Okay, how far did it go in terms of putting every, you go sometimes in the zoo or in aquariums, and they have some smaller boxes of little animals and little species of, I don't know, different species of different animals and so on, or even some insects and birds and whatever else, different types of snakes. And what about varieties? Two snakes, for instance, do you have to take two snakes? Which variety? Okay, how many varieties of snakes do we have? I'm not good with that, but you're good. I'm glad we live in a time that at our fingertips we can look it up. Yeah, look it up, and you'll find that there are probably hundreds or thousands of varieties of the snakes, for instance. So did he have to take thousands of snakes? Because interestingly, they suggest that they had some animals like lions, and they made stories that okay, there was some beast, and he had to feed them some of the animals and whatever else. I mean, did he have to take lions in there? Every type of lion that exists. Again, we have so many types of lions itself, or cats, the cat family. I mean, all the different um, I don't know, leopards to tigers to lions to. Did he have to take all these things? To me personally, that does not make sense. What he had to carry with him are the animals necessary for them to survive when they come down. Okay, so things like perhaps sheep, cows, even maybe dogs, if for shepherd dogs and things like that. So things that they were raising, okay, things that they had in farms and so on, is what they had to take with them. Okay, take with them, I don't know, different, I don't know, turkey maybe, the chicken, because even these things, there's a limit to how far they can fly, and they will not survive. I remember I was in a boat trip with some brothers, and all of a sudden we found this little bird that somehow got lost and was looking for somewhere to land. So it landed in our boat, even though it feared humans, but it had no choice because otherwise it would land in the water. It was an interesting experience. It was a realization for me that they have a limit to how far they can fly, and so they have to land somewhere. So he had to take these, cattle, animals that are useful, animals that they need when they come down. Otherwise, other parts of the world continued having their, I don't know, kangaroos and whatever else. Yeah, they can. We have, unfortunately, we have stories that seeped into our books from, and some narrations from what we consider Israeliyat, or from some people who made up stuff, but they don't seem to be true. And unfortunately, a lot of the times, people just follow things blindly. They don't put things into perspective. But if we try and do that, we realize that there are so many things that one has to consider. And even, I mean, okay, some may suggest, well, this is a miracle. Okay, if it was a miracle, why did he have to carry them in the ship in the first place? If God wants to miraculously bring all these animals from different parts of the world to save them, he could have saved them in a different way. Send them all to the highest mountain, make that mountain warm enough for them to survive the time of the flood. And, if either it's a miracle or a natural thing. Obviously, there are miracles about it, but for him to have to pick up all these animals, if it was his mission to save all these animals, it wouldn't, God wouldn't command him to save the animals that are not accessible to him. If it was his mission, he would have had to go all around the world, pick up all the different species and varieties of animals, and bring them and put them in the ship. A lot of this wouldn't make sense. Now, a lot of the people in the past did not, I guess, analyze things a lot. Okay, especially when they were familiar with their regions before they explored, I don't know, the other regions of the world, including, the Americas and the perhaps even Australia or other parts of the world. Before they got into this and analyzed things and looked at how far that would have been. I mean, the water necessary to flood the entire earth, do we even have that kind of water between underground water and the clouds, for instance? I don't know. I'm not an expert on the matter, but it sounds a little, a little bit of an exaggerated term to say the entire earth had to go underwater. Okay. It does not seem to be the actual event does not seem to be in this, to this extent. The people who were, and again, if we go even based on the fact that he guided people, they denied, therefore they were, in fact, let's just quickly look at this term. وَأَغْرَقْنَا الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. Okay, back to ayah 73. Yes, وَأَغْرَقْنَا الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. Who did God say he drowned? The people who denied. كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. Okay. So if a people did not hear, could they be included there? And I gave the example of the seal of the Prophet, the final messenger, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At his time, communication was better than previous nations. Yes, would we agree that that would be the case? So communication between humans at the time of our seal of the prophets, the messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, at his time, communication between humans would have been better than the time of Nabiullah Nuh. It's easier. Yet during his life, he invited, the immediate nations around him, his nation and the immediate nations around him, from Persians to Romans to Yemenis and North African nations and so on. The kingdoms around him. He sent letters to the kings around him. Some of you may remember the beginning of The Message. The movie, The Message. The beginning of it was when the horsemen were taking his message or his letter to the kings. Okay, each of them to one of the kings, and then it goes on from there. So his mission at his time, although it's worldwide mission, but at his time it reached those people. They were warned. Okay. For Nabiullah Nuh ala nabina wa alayhi salam, he invited that region. Okay, and perhaps maybe even letters to nearby regions and so on. But did he go as far as, I don't know, the Americas, for instance? Did he go to Australia? Did he go to China, for example? Or did he not go? I don't know, but it does not seem like he would have gone that far. And to drown all these people, despite not having received him as a messenger directly and received his message directly, and therefore not having denied, it does not even go in line with what the ayah said. فَكَذَّبُوهُ فَنَجَّيْنَا وَمَنْ مَعَهُ. And what else? وَأَغْرَقْنَا الَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. We drowned those who denied our signs. So that's now I do agree that we do have a narrative that is frequently mentioned in some of the movies that are made about the stories of the prophets, but some of those stories have a lot of errors, by the way. We have to be very careful. Some of the stories that are some of the cartoon movies made for the about the stories of the prophets, they have errors, and some of them have a lot of errors. Even some of them that are made by the school of Ahlul Bayt, sometimes they go with a particular narration that may not be true, and sometimes it's some of those stories or narrations are hard to digest, to say the least. So inshallah we'll continue with the last part of the ayah. فانظر كيف كان عاقبة المنذرين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and again this mundarin is in line with what we just said. God only takes his protection away and therefore punishes those whom were warned. Okay? Al-Mundarin are those who are warned. Al-Munzir is the warner. Al-Munzar is the one who receives the warning. He says, therefore, look at what was the ending, or how was the ending of كيف كان عاقبة, the ending of the people who were warned, المنذرين, the people who were warned. This ayah has messages and lessons, or this part of the ayah, for every time, every nation, every situation, and very powerful message. First, Quran is telling us, Fandur, look, don't be blind. Things are happening around you, don't be blind. Things happen to you sometimes, don't be blind. You know, I was speaking to my son, and I had to tell him literally this. Look at what is happening and why it's happening. There are reasons why things happen. Nothing happens with no reason. Everything has to have a reason. إِنَّا كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَاهُ بِقَدَرٍ. Everything has a measure. Therefore, we have to look at what is the reason. If we are struggling in certain ways, financially, health-wise, family-wise, family problems, we keep having problems and fights. Look at why. Ask yourself the question, and don't put the blame on others. You know, when the people were receiving punishments, often, or signs of the punishments, you know, sometimes the signs come, or, you know, mild things come. These are God's subtle, what we call lutf, you know, kindness, altaf, khafiyya. It's a way of us waking up. Wake up, realign, get yourself back online. Some signs come. The problem with many people is they start blaming the other party. They start blaming their prophets. A tree dried up, they started blaming their prophets, their prophet, and therefore they put him underground and buried him in a way that they could hear him and his cries until he dies. Ashab al-Ras, Imam Ali alayhi salam describes their story. And it had to do with a tree that they used to worship. They thought this was their god. They used to take pieces of it and put it in their homes as, you know, a symbol of their god. I don't know if the same people eventually brought into the Western culture the tree that somehow they associated with the birth of Jesus, peace be upon him, and it has nothing to do with the birth of Jesus at all. You know, there's absolutely no link between the tree and the birth of Jesus, but it's introduced somehow. In any case, could be the same people because their villages were destroyed and they dispersed. That's what the Imam Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam says. So they blamed their prophet. They came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anytime something good happens, they say this is from God. Anytime something bad happens, they say this is from you. Something bad happens to them. This is all because of you. You keep telling us these things. You keep jinxing us. You keep ridiculing our idols. They represent God. We get closer to God through them. And that is why we're getting punished. It's because of you. They don't even see the signs. So to see is or to look and not be blind is very important. So the first thing after the story is mentioned and how the non-believers or those who denied were drowned, in the immediate thing God says is fanzur, look, don't be blind. Important, very important. In your lives, you go through things. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. Look at the reasons. If you have a blessing, be grateful, but look make the associations. Why? And if you're getting punished and have some loss of health, financial stability, and so on, look at why. Some people may say, but it could be a bala for raising status. It's not necessarily a punishment. Yes, that's true. But at the same time, if you looked at why and tried to associate it with something, you would be eliminating the possible reasons why you're getting into trouble. And if it's not, you're still in a better shape because you're reflecting on, you're eliminating any possibility. Even if you're in IT or any kind of problem solving, elimination is a very important procedure. Eliminate it. Is it possible that I am receiving this because I did something? Let me look into it. What could it be? Okay. Even in, if somebody has allergies, if they don't do the testing, they do the initial thing is elimination. They tell the parent, for instance, don't give them different things for a few days. Stop giving them eggs, for example, or stop giving them milk, or different things, and see how they react. So elimination. Whenever we go through some problems in life, think of what could I have done wrong that would have led to this. Fanzur, important. And then there is a aqiba, there is an ending. Look most significantly at the ending. Don't judge too quick. As a Farsi saying, it says, don't count your chooks until the end of the season. Some of them don't survive. In English, they say, don't count your chicken before they hatch. Yeah. So it's very similar. Akhare pais, they say, the end of the season, basically. The pais is the autumn. In any case, that's the same meaning. The ending is what matters. Don't look at things with a short sight. Don't be short-sighted. When you look at the end. انظر كيف كان عاقبة المنذرين. Very, very important. Another very important lesson. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us. And when we are warned and we don't listen, we are worse than not being warned and not paying heed. Do you agree? If a parent says to their children or their child, this is gonna harm you, what you're doing. Another child does not have a parent to say that to them, or does not have a wise parent to tell them that. They both get into the same trouble. Are they the same? One was warned, one was not warned. Yeah? They're not the same. So in fact, the feeling of the individual who was warned would be different. The humiliation of the individual who was warned would be different. One of the things that people avoid is what we call in Arabic ta'yir, that somebody would tell them, I told you so. That people would avoid that even on the day of judgment. Quran tells us that even on the day of judgment, people don't want to be in that situation where they're told. And one of the things that will happen is that they will be told, even by angels and other believers, that we told you so. It will happen. Ahsantum. So, alam ahad ilaykum is ta'nif from God. So even God will tell you. The messenger, their messenger, the angels, and so on. So, mundarin are the people who are warned. And insan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of love for human beings, He warns them. He does not leave them without a warning. Everybody is warned. Everybody is given the bishara and the good news and the warnings. And the name of the prophet, or the titles of the prophet amongst them, is Al-Bashir and Al-Nadir. He is the warner. So the warnings are there. The signs are there, the warnings are there. And warnings, by the way, are not out of strictness. Some may say it's out of strictness. They're so strict. Why is it? No, warnings are out of love. If a government cares for its people, a government would warn the people. Signs on the street to warn you of dangers ahead are out of care and love. Yes, you might say it's the law or lawsuits. Huh? Maybe that too. But I mean, if a parent warns, it's because a parent loves, cares. The primary reason why these things came about, and we use more of them, is because we care. The more we care, the more we are giving reminders and warnings. Be careful, this could be dangerous. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of His love, out of His kindness, He warned, and He only, the endings that we are reading here is only after the warnings. Mundarin. This brings us to a very important discussion, whether the people before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were warned or they were not warned. We have suggestions that لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم من قبل. Yeah? So their fathers were not warned. Were they not warned, or did they not listen to the warnings? That is a main difference. So if someone does not pay heed to the warnings at all, it is almost considered as not warned. Okay, ma undira, it's not like the warnings were not there. They were not warned. They were not listening at all. Okay, so yes, warnings were there, but they did not pay heed to it in a way that it was as if it was not there, as if they did not see any of it. For instance, if you're going on the road and you're meant to look at the signs, the street signs, and the government tells you, do not put very dark tint on your front windows, and they even come and do a test on the darkness of the tint, and you could get a fine if your tint is too dark. Why? Because you're supposed to see the signs as you're driving, especially at night. You're supposed to see the signs. What if you had put so much dark tint on your windows? Almost like solid, there's nothing, you couldn't see anything. And even you put some dark tint in the front window. Okay? Some people do those things, by the way. You make it so dark that you cannot see any street signs. Now, would you say that you were warned as you're driving, and there are signs saying hazard ahead, and you don't see the signs, and obviously because you made your car so dark you could not see the signs, and you did not realize that there's a hazard, and all of a sudden you have an accident, hurt yourself. You could say, I was not warned. There were no warnings. I did not see any warnings. Well, you tinted your windows so much you could not see the warnings. So the ma'undara is not that there were no warnings. They did not listen to any warnings. They did not hear any warnings. They did not care to listen or hear any of the previous warnings. They neglected them completely, so they were not warned in that sense. But again, a reminder that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not punish a people or take away his protection of the people that would lead into their own struggles or the consequences of their own actions unless and until he warns them. If he does not warn them, so he gives us warnings. Be careful to see them. Last word about this before we have the kids session. Be careful to see the signs of those warnings, because oftentimes, just like for diseases, there are symptoms and there are early symptoms. For these consequences, there are warnings, and some of the warnings are very early, so that we can change. And don't forget that this surah is named after the only nation amongst the nations that were mentioned in different prophets, the only nation that saw the signs and changed and prevented the punishment or the consequence of their action was the people of Yunus, ala nabina wa alayhi salam, illa, except for the people of Yunus. Previous nations did not, but the people of Yunus, they saw the signs, they returned, changed, sought forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he protected them once again, and did not, that whatever was going to happen to them did not happen, to the surprise of their prophet, Nabiullah Yunus ala nabina wa alayhi salam. When he came back, he realized that they survived it. So he knew that they had changed, they had done things differently. So this is important to keep in mind. Watch out for the signs and look, hunger, don't be blind. And when things go wrong, don't attribute them to others, don't blame everybody else. First and foremost, look at yourself and what did I do to deserve this? Not to say what did I do to deserve this, as in like I didn't do anything to deserve this. Sometimes people say that. Now, what did I do? No, look at it and ask yourself that question sincerely so that you can find solutions to change while we're still able to change, inshallah. So with that, we finish that session, and we have a short session for our youth, inshallah. For all, actually, but more focused for the youth. And the hadith that I'd like to share is a hadith. Ahsan, that's a good, yeah. Ahsan. Who can remember last week's hadith? Yes. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Peace. أحسنت. ليس الشديد من حمل الثقيل. You want to read the Arabic one? Both of them. Wow, mashallah. Come. All right, shy. I'll say it on your behalf. Yeah? Is that okay? No? Not even that? Okay. So yeah, ليس الشديد من حمل الثقيل وليس الشديد بالصرعة إنما من ملك نفسه عند الغضب. So it is not by pinning somebody down, and in fact it is by controlling yourself when you are angry. There is another one that's من حمل الثقيل, but we did not do that one. We did the صرعة. And the حمل الثقيل is like carrying weights. Okay, also, it is narrated about carrying weights. So he said, it's not about how heavy of a weight you can carry. It's about how much you can control yourself if you're angry. And that is what determines if you are a tough man or not. The other hadith or the second hadith that I would like to share, and I want you to all, inshallah, learn and memorize, is regarding knowledge, a hadith about knowledge. Yes? The hadith about knowledge. It says, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, اطلب العلم من المهد إلى اللحد. Many of you already know it. Very well done, mashallah. اطلب العلم means seek. Talab is to go out and seek something. Okay? Talab al-rizq, for example, is when somebody goes out to seek his sustenance, his needs for his livelihood. اطلب العلم is to seek it. So seek it in the sense that you may need to make an effort. You may need to go out and seek it. It's not just sit down and wait for it. And ilm, knowledge, most significant is the kind of knowledge that would help us in our greater journey. So, yes, all types of sciences and knowledge are that are beneficial for humanity are good. There are certain things that are not considered as science or knowledge. The hadith, somebody was focused on certain, ansab about, the father and the grandfather and this family tree and so on. And we in the hadith we are told that that's not knowledge. Okay, where this lineage and so on, it's not going to help us in our journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unless there is a reason that we're doing it. But there are certain things that are not necessarily considered as knowledge. For example, the modern day example I would use is following celebrities. There's some people are so concerned about celebrities. Yeah, they have magazines about them, they read about them, they have websites following them. There are spy websites. Where is this actor or actress? What are they doing? And celebrities. All of this does not help us in any way at all. Okay, it is the kind of information, I wouldn't even call it knowledge. It's the kind of information that does not help us in any way. Okay, just waste our time. So it's actually harmful. Whereas ilm is beneficial. Medicine, geography, science, technology, beneficial stuff for humanity, and most importantly, ethics and spirituality, because that is for the continued journey, not just journey on this earth, but our continuous journey after death. So that's very important. Min al-mahdi ila Allah is very, very, very important to reflect on. So again, اطلب العلم, seek, and get out of your comfort to seek knowledge. Min al-mahdi, from the cradle, ila Allah, to the grave, when they put the stone. Lahd is when they put the stone of the grave. The last stage before they put the soil is they put that lahd, the stone, and then or the cover, and then they pour the sand over it. Okay, so from the beginning in a cradle to the grave. Now a question: how does a child in the cradle seek knowledge? Is it exaggerated or is it real? It seems it is real. And that part is a responsibility perhaps on the parents, because the child does not have the ability to make a decision at that point to learn. And therefore, the parents have to participate and teach them during that time. And it seems to be an obligation because it is not optional. Is it optional? Utlubu is a command. A command is not optional. So the Prophet is commanding us to seek knowledge. And from cradle, perhaps to the parents and the guardians to be the ones providing that, and then ongoing to the grave, never late and never ends. This journey of seeking knowledge, very important, it's continuous. From the cradle, and I'll finish, I know I've taken a lot of time, but I'll finish with this example. There is a child who's now an adult, but when I was your age, roughly, the children, I was, I think, 10, 12 years old. This child was a 4-year-old child who had memorized the entire Quran. 4-year-old, he memorized the entire Quran. They gave him prizes and PhDs and even European. They went to England. Some university gave him an honorary PhD because he could even give the meanings, not only the Arabic but the Farsi meanings, because he was Iranian, the kid. So he would give the Farsi meanings. He did the sign thing. His father had developed the sign language, specific sign language for memorizing the Quran, assisted basically memorization program where they use signs and so on. In any case, when they asked how did it all start, it all started when his mother was teaching his siblings and others. His mother had a class of teaching Quran, and as she taught Quran, he was a young baby in the cradle, and he was participating by listening. And so eventually they realized that he knew so many chapters and he was only 2 years old. So many of the short chapters, Juzu Amma and so on. That's when they realized he is very skillful, he's basically gifted, and they realized the effect of them teaching at that age and him being exposed to that those classes at that age. So they continued, and he got to finish memorizing the Quran at the age of 4. So the children have abilities and they can learn a lot, and it is our responsibility when they're in the cradle to teach them. Later on, when they have the ability, we remind them. But earlier, we do it for them, inshallah. So, اطلب العلم من المهدي إلى اللحد, from the cradle to the grave. You will remember that, inshallah? All right, we'll try and remind you next week, inshallah, or next session. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.